Hi guys, welcome to Office Blokes Reacts. I'm Office Bloke Dave.
I'm Office Bloke Mike.
I'm Office Bloke Daz.
Collectively we are the Office Blokes. We have 2 other YouTube channels, Patreon page, social media merch, all that good stuff. Click the link in the description and it'll take you where you need to go. And if you give a couple of us a follow on Instagram too, you get some behind the sscenes stuff, don't you?
Get some personal touch as well.
Yeah, personally touched. So we love the infographics channel, and we've done some good stuff from them so far. This is a bit of an old one, but we were doing quite a lot of the military comparison stuff a few months ago, and we kind of dipped out of it a bit unintentionally. So USA versus Iran, who would win? Military army comparison. I wouldn't mind betting the Iranian army's quite big.
It's very big.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's pretty sizable, isn't it?
They have the isn't it? They call something like the Green Guard or something. Is it? I can't remember what they're called.
Is that their sort of elite special forces?
That's their army, and it's like a crack army force, aren't they?
Yeah.
But yeah, very powerful nation.
Well, we'll then obviously we know the US are pretty well
we know their capabilities.
So technology-wise and everything. So
so we'll get into it.
Yeah, interesting.
USA versus Iran, who would win? 2019.
As we write this, you don't have to look far to find headlines in the media containing the words US and Iran and conflict. The BBC writes that the USA has sent over 1,000 troops to the Middle East because, according to the American Acting Defense Secretary, Patrick Shanahan, Iran has been acting hostile. Iran has been accused of oil tanker attacks, and the country, it said, will also soon breach a 2015 deal regarding its uranium stockpiles. The New York Times has called this a new confrontation with the West. How bad could this get? What kind of a threat would Iran be? Is there really a threat at all when compared to the might of the US military? Let's have a look. If you watched...
You know, I forgot, but pre-COVID, it was on the verge of war, USA and Iran, wasn't it, at one point? Because there was the general that the US blew up, the Iranian general.
Yeah.
There was the oil tanker thing.
Yeah.
There was quite a lot, wasn't there?
Oh, it's getting a bit touchy.
Something happened recently.
Yeah.
Did it?
Yesterday, maybe, or the day before.
What, with Iran? Oh, I don't know. Must have missed
I read in the news something. I wasn't sure if it was an historical thing, but I'll tell you what it was. It was what's his name? The Foreign Secretary here, Raab.
Yeah,
Dominic Raab came out giving it bigging about Iran and slating them and saying we're going to put embargo on them.
Right.
One more embargo. I don't know how many embargoes we've got on them already.
I think it's a few because of the building the nuclear facilities, isn't it? I think is that what the embargoes are for? A lot of it.
Iran's always been like a bit of a bit of trouble, aren't they? They're just constantly fucking poking the fucking bear, aren't they?
They do like to do a bit of that, don't they? But sort of like backed by sort of like Russia and China, I suppose, aren't they?
I think there's a lot.
Anyway,
there's a lot of posturing goes on both sides, isn't there?
Oh yeah, massively. Yeah, without doubt.
Any of our other military comparison shows, then you're likely already an expert when it comes to the arsenal of the US military. You'll know that the US spends more on defense than any other country by a long, long way. Sources differ, and it's hard to get the exact spending down to the last dollar, but in 2018 it's reported that the USA's defense budget was somewhere between $587 billion and $597 billion. But if you go to the actual US Department of Defense website, one of the first things you'll read is that President Trump plans to pump an extra $160 billion into defense. The prediction from the DoD, right from the horse's mouth, is that by the end of 2019, defense spending will have reached $686 billion. Where does all this cash go? Well, the DoD website just breaks it down into simply various departments: the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, and Joint Chiefs. If you're wondering what the Joint Chiefs are, well, they kind of run the show. Part of their mission statement reads, "The future operating environment will place new demands on leaders at all levels. Our leaders must have the training, education, and experience to meet those demands." It's not all about spending money on killer toys, of course, because you have a lot of paychecks at the end of the week. The U.S. military has 2,083,100 personnel. 1,281,900 work as active personnel, and 801,200 reservists. On top of that, you have all kinds of special units and specialists to pay. It's not free when the US, say, wants to buy artificial intelligence technology to scan faces, go through hours of drone videos, etc. Research and development, according to the US military, eats up a great deal of money. Thankfully, someone else has broken down the budget for us, and it goes like this. A little over $205 billion goes to the Navy, and the Air Force will basically get the same at $204.8 billion. $191.4 billion will go to the Army, and $116.6 billion will go to projects spread across the DoD. $104.3 billion will go to research, development, test, and evaluation. $143.1 billion will go to buying new things, such as expensive aircraft and ships. $155.8 billion will actually go to the actual men and women of the military through the paycheck budget. $22.5 billion will go to building houses for personnel and other military construction projects. $292.7 billion.
Fucking way over budget.
I was going to say, I'm sure that's more than the 500-600 billion they were saying before.
I think you might be right there.
Wow.
Sneaking suspicion, because up until then I was thinking Jeff Bezos could afford this. And then I think we've gone over Jeff Bezos' budget now as well.
The biggest part of the budget is for maintaining the military. If you add all this up, though, it comes to more than the actual
There you
budget.
go.
That's because some of the spending overlaps, such as research, purchases, or wages, that might need to be accounted for as part of the individual forces' budgets. If you look at what the military has been buying or trying to buy, you'll see that the F-35 Joint Strike Fighters are a big item on the shopping list. These things also get sold, of course, but as we write this, Japan, according to some reports, is no longer looking at buying many more of them because it has created its own aircraft that it sees as superior. Nonetheless, if you follow military news, you'll know that these things are still selling like hotcakes. The US currently has around 200, plans to build a staggering 1,763 more. As we've said before, the US no doubt has the most powerful air force in the world, and we just cannot list everything that's in its arsenal of flying machines. But some of the most powerful beasts include the fleets of F-22 Raptors, F-15E Strike Eagles, F/A-18EF Super Hornets, and F-16 Fighting Falcons. Some of the newer machines are 15 KC-46 tanker strategic military transport aircrafts and also the B-21 stealth bomber. So, can Iran afford to spend billions and billions of dollars on just one plane alone? Well, the answer is a resounding no, and in fact, recent news reports tell us that the country has slashed defense spending to the equivalent of $43 billion. Compare this to reports in 2019 that the U.S. Navy just paid Virginia shipbuilder Huntington Ingalls $15 billion to start construction on the new Ford-class aircraft carriers. Also bear in mind the billions spent on new aircraft, or the two fleet replenishment oilers at $1.1 billion, the 5,113 Joint Light Tactical Vehicles costing $2 billion, or the M1 Abrams tank modification setting the U.S. back $2.7 billion. Just one new Columbia-class submarine will cost $3.7 billion, and the military has requested $6 billion for some DDG-51 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers.
$3.7 billion for one submarine.
That is a lot of money.
It's incomprehensible.
Billions.
Absolutely, man.
Billions.
Some fleet, haven't
Wow.
they?
Just a bit.
Yeah, say.
Yeah, they've got some equipment, haven't they? Really.
Good job with buddies.
Hey,
Well, I think I was reading the other day. One of our ships went into the South China Sea or wherever it is, or the disputed waters around China and all around there. They don't.
That's right.
China claims they own them all, and they don't. And China have called us a what do they call us, a bitch in the media.
Rude,
in the media, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, some I can't remember what the first word was, but it was something like they're gonna get bitch slapped or something like that. It was
Wow.
the word, yeah. And
Wow.
America have stepped in and sort of like told them to fucking pipe down.
Well, you'll get
Yeah.
slapped.
Yeah.
It's balmy, and it's absolutely crazy when
man.
you think about it.
The list goes on, and we cannot possibly tell you everything on that shopping list. But all in all, you have over 2 million personnel, around 13,400 military planes and counting, including about 5,700 helicopters. Add to that 6,287 tanks for land-based operations. Then on water, you have a total of 20 aircraft carriers, which are like traveling army, and would be very important when fighting a country located on the other side of the globe. The USA also has 68 destroyers and 68 submarines, but as you know, more of both are in the pipeline. As you can see, this is shaping up to be a David and Goliath story. No one doubts that in terms of equipment, the USA has by far the biggest and arguably most advanced military in the world. We say arguably because countries such as China, Japan, the UK, India, France, Russia also have some very capable military toys. Iran, though, well, You won't find the country on the top 10 lists when it comes to military might, and some writers have described Iran's equipment as being Cold War-era machines. In total, Iran has 523,000 active military personnel, but also around 350,000 reservists. They own 509 military aircraft, which sounds fairly impressive, but let's see what kind of planes these are. For starters, they have 54 American-made McDonnell Douglas F-4 Phantom IIs. Some of these are pretty old, but we're told many have been upgraded. Joining the list are also some other capable multi-role aircraft, such as 23 French-made Dassault Mirage F-1s. As for ground attack, Iran has about 50 Russian-made planes and the Sukhoi Su range, the Su-22, Su-24, and 25. Iran is also in the process of building a 5th-generation stealth fighter aircraft called the IAIO Kaher-313, although some experts have cast doubts as to how viable this aircraft.
You built that, old McDonald.
Yeah.
You'd like to think it looks a bit more impressive in real life, really. But,
I wouldn't put any money on a Russian aircraft neither, would you?
well,
Being very reliable.
yeah, I get that.
will be. This is not a weak Air Force by any means, but much of that strength comes from purchased American military hardware. That said, much of this fleet is aging and in need of an upgrade, whereas the American military has never stopped upgrading their equipment, whether they need it or not, as any American taxpayer can tell you. As for tanks, Iran has 1,634 of them, but we might ask just how advanced these tanks are. Well, again, the country owns quite a few older models bought from the USA, Russia, and has also some homemade tanks. But in 2018, Iran's Deputy Defense Minister Reza announced that the country was in the process of building another 700 to 800 new tanks. The country also has 2,345 armored fighting vehicles. But compare that to the 39,223 armored fighting vehicles in the USA, which for the most part are much more modern. But where Iran is really weak is in the water, as it doesn't have a single aircraft carrier to speak of. Remember, the US has 20. The country has no destroyers either, but does have a 34-strong submarine fleet and 6 frigates. While Iran really is an underdog to the US military, that doesn't mean it isn't a strong military. Ranking militaries is difficult and shouldn't be taken as an exact science. Iran has had to be a strong military presence before, and it has a large, well-trained military because of its location in a volatile region. Reporting has stated that they have a ground force that includes over 1,600 tanks, 725 reconnaissance and infantry fighting vehicles, 640 armored personnel carriers, 2,322 towed and self-propelled howitzers, and 1,476 multiple rocket launchers. Yes, the numbers can change, since we guess the press doesn't have a regular tank counter working all over the world, but we're guessing these numbers are pretty close to reality.
You know, the thing with Iran is it's in such a volatile area of the world that there'll be neighbours of Iran that are ready to go as well, but against them as well as there may be some allies. So it's one of those.
Yeah.
It's one of those. You just don't know which way it's going to go. Do you?
Well, you got Iraq's on one side of it. What's on the
There was
other?
Afghanistan
Turkey, is it?
and
Turkmenistan, I think, wasn't it?
Turkmenistan,
So some pretty volatile regions, isn't there? Not regions, countries.
Pakistan as well.
Syria's
was
over that
just
way,
there.
isn't
Yeah, of course.
And you think even like between Pakistan and India, there's quite a lot of beef and there's a lot of tension. And
Yeah,
I think Saudi Arabia have beef with Iran as well, don't they?
do they?
Mm.
So you just don't like. We're talking
Saudi's
about
quite powerful.
We're
Yeah.
talking about the American sort of forces here, but then you might have Saudi jump on board with the Americans, and then
That's right, yeah.
someone might jump on board with Iran.
And it's World War III.
Well, it would
Well,
be
they've
World
had-
War
they've had
III.
loads
And Russia joins in, and then
Yeah.
China joins in,
That's
and
the
then we're all
thing, isn't it?
fucked.
And then we stop ordering cheap Chinese stuff off Amazon, and then China have to bow out because they're skint.
With America spend up in the spend on all this military hardware and all this kind of stuff, and the military budget, do they know something we don't know?
I think a lot of it's just sort of like a defence mechanism, isn't it? You know, it's
I think it's be the biggest guy on the block, or someone else
Yeah.
will be.
yeah,
I think that's what it is, really. It's interesting, isn't it?
yeah, very.
Much like their air fleet though, much of this equipment is somewhat outdated and likely needing of either upgrading or a full replacement. Now, we already know that the USA has some of the most advanced special forces units in the world, and also is not bad at collecting intelligence through the CIA, NIS, and both of their cutting-edge computer technologies. But the Iranian forces have also a special branch that is said to be very highly trained and is an entity to be feared, the Quds Force, a special ops unit within Iran's Revolutionary Guards. They number around
Revolutionary
15 to
Guards, that's what it
30,000 very skilled agents and work in what you might call unconventional warfare. Iran also has the advantage in the event of an invasion of being a geographically difficult country to assault via land. It's a large country, and the major cities are mostly located in areas that would be difficult for land forces to quickly reach. And now we come back to the start. What about these new fears of nuclear conflict? The New York Times writes this: Iran is still well more than a year away from being able to build a weapon, perhaps much longer. But the experts in the article also...
This was in 2019.
Yeah.
2 years ago now.
2 years ago.
Uh-oh.
said it would take much longer to produce what the Times called a deliverable weapon. It's highly unlikely Iran is thinking about attacking the USA. And many European countries have blamed the US for putting Iran in a difficult position thanks to harsh sanctions. We won't get into the politics, but suffice to say, confrontation of military powers with nuclear weapons is not something anyone wants. As Newsweek points out, while the US military is by far superior in every way, an invasion would be a long, drawn-out affair. They wrote, "If decades of difficult conflicts worldwide have taught the American military anything, it's that a mighty armory goes only so far. Let's hope for some diplomacy that works for both nations and the threat of a conflict behind us." What do you think about all of this? Many things might have happened by the time this episode is released, but just in terms of how an invasion would work out, what do you think?
Scary stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
Especially when you've got Ed Casey's at the top.
That's the thing. It's the leaders, isn't it? You know, at the moment, the region like Iran and Iraq are sort of probably, I think, are fairly stable because they've had sort of issues with each other as well, haven't they, over the years? But
Do you not read in the news yesterday?
Go on.
I read a lot of news yesterday. Gaddafi's son, who everyone thought was dead, is alive and reckons he's going to try and lead Libya again.
Really?
Into new beginnings.
Brilliant. That's all we need, isn't it? It's gone fairly quiet there, hasn't it, last few years?
Not if you live there.
Well, yeah.
All he has to do is start a political party, and if he gets democratically voted in, no one can say anything.
Yeah,
unless he's
true.
a war criminal from the past, which is very likely that he is actually a war criminal. I don't know much about him, though, to be fair.
But yeah, I read up on that yesterday, so watch out for there as well.
All we need, isn't it?
Well, I mean, everyone's just pulled out of Afghanistan now, haven't they? Obviously, this was 2 years ago. Well, it was still, very active, and it's going to shit pretty quick.
Yeah, well, I suspect the Taliban are just going in and taking over, aren't they?
Well, the big issue is with the translators that the army used.
There's a big issue with that, isn't
big
there?
issue with it at the moment. Yeah, they're killing him.
Well, they need to get them out, don't they? You know, the service that they're putting for Britain and America and everything, just get them out there and get them living over here.
It's not over here.
Well,
put in Australia.
They need to be safe somewhere, don't they? Australia's done a great job for us. So,
this time of the year.
But I think the American military there, not just the nuclear thing, it's all the others is like a deterrent as well, isn't it? Just having a massive army, 20 aircraft carriers, nuclear
2 million
submarines,
service personnel.
Even that's a deterrent in itself, isn't it? But it's scary stuff.
I like the military stuff's good.
It's interesting.
It's really interesting. Yeah.
The thing is, there's only so much people will take when they're backed into a corner with sanctions and everything else, though. And
of course, yeah. Well, you hope with decent leaders they'll take that sanctions, but then say, right, we need to do something different, so we don't have as many sanctions. But some are a bit sort of stubborn, aren't they? And just carry on.
It's quite a nice place Iran as well.
Yeah, so I believe. Yeah, I mean, a lot of them are quite fairly westernised, aren't they? They love like Western stuff, don't they?
Yeah.
So,
my mate Stacey, she was there only just pre-COVID. She was there. Her brother-in-law's Iranian or sort of Iranian descent. I'm not sure which one it is. But yeah, they went on holiday there for a few weeks. She absolutely loved it.
Yeah, it's good.
It's a beautiful country.
Yeah.
And that was just as things were starting to heat up as well pre-COVID. With the posturing on either side and stuff.
I think it's the leaders and the politicians, isn't it? Not the people that live there.
No,
they're the problems.
Syria's the same. Syria was beautiful before the wars. We were due to fly out that weekend when it all kicked off.
Oh, really? Wow.
My dad's been a few times driving trucks through Syria, and he said it's stunning, absolutely stunning. Yeah. Really green, which you wouldn't expect. A lot of it is just beautiful.
You'd think it'd be like pretty much desert again, wouldn't you? In that
it's not
area,
anymore.
but
it's flattened most part. Yeah,
it's bad.
It's in a bad way. It's in a bad state.
Shame.
Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed that too. Don't forget like and subscribe. Hit the bell, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Cheers, guys.